Photosynthesis is the process that converts energy from sunlight into food. No eating is required for plants to get the energy they need for the day, just a healthy dose of sunlight, carbon dioxide, and water. The chemical equation for this photosynthesis process is 6CO2, or carbon dioxide, plus 6H2O, or water, yields C6H12O6, which is glucose, plus 6O2, which is oxygen. Photosynthesis uses carbon dioxide that you breathe out along with sunshine and water to create sugars and expel oxygen. And one of the major players in this process is contained within plant chloroplasts, or organelles that are the site of photosynthesis. Chloroplasts reside in most leaf cells. Both chloroplasts and the leaves themselves are different shades of green due to a lovely pigment they contain. A pigment is a compound that absorbs a particular wavelength of visible light. Chlorophyll is a green pigment contained in the thylakoid membranes of chloroplasts that is used in photosynthesis by plants. The electromagnetic spectrum is the range of wavelengths from the radio waves of your car stereo to high-energy gamma rays. Chlorophyll and other pigments absorb specific visible wavelengths of the electromagnetic spectrum. The visible light is literally the colored wavelengths that are visible to your eyes. They range from red at a wavelength of 700 nanometers to blue at a wavelength of 400 nanometers. Shorter wavelengths have higher energy, such as blue, and longer wavelengths, like red, have lower energy. Chlorophyll mostly absorbs blue and red wavelengths from sunlight. Therefore, it reflects the middle part of this visible spectrum, the green wavelengths. That is why plants look green. The color of a pigment is the wavelength of a light that is reflected, or the wavelength that is not absorbed. Chlorophyll contains electrons that are normally at a low energy state, or ground state. But when chlorophyll absorbs light energy, the electrons get really excited. They jump to a high energy level, or excited state. Although we'll save the details of this process for a different time, this super-excited electron is then transferred from the chlorophyll pigment to a primary electron acceptor. Hence, chlorophyll becomes oxidized. Now, photosynthesis can use both chlorophyll pigments and other accessory pigments that reflect colors other than green. These accessory pigments absorb other wavelengths of light and pass on the energy to chlorophyll, expanding the range of wavelengths that can be used for photosynthesis. Now, photosynthesis is consisted of two parts. The first part of this process consists of the light reactions, while the second is called the dark reactions, also known as the Calvin cycle. It's important to remember that the light-dependent reactions use sunlight and the dark reactions do not. Now, inside of a plant cell, inside of a chloroplast, and within the thylakoid membrane there are photostems, which are the sites of the light-dependent photosynthesis reactions. There are two types of photostems, photostem 1 and photostem 2. Photostem 2 is actually used before photostem 1, but they are numbered for the order they were discovered. Now, photostems contain an antenna complex. The antenna complex contains the pigment chlorophyll A, which is what makes them green. Photostems also have accessory pigments of other colors. Pigments, remember, absorb a specific wavelength of light. In photostem 2, chlorophyll molecules are called P680 because they optimally absorb light at this wavelength, while in photostem 1 they are called P70. Now, in these photostems, pigments pass the energy absorbed from light to the reaction center. This is in the middle of the photostem. The reaction center contains a special pair of chlorophyll molecules coupled with proteins. Now, when the light energy hits the reaction center, electrons from the chlorophyll molecules are excited to a higher energy level. These head straight to a primary electron acceptor. Now, what goes up must come back down. These energized electrons come back down in energy levels by moving through an electron transport chain. Electron acceptor proteins reside within the thylakoid membrane. These proteins also become reduced as they accept electrons and become oxidized as they pass electrons down the chain. The primary electron acceptor passes the electrons down to these membrane proteins as they decrease in energy level until they reach photostem 1. Meanwhile, The electron transport chain of photosynthesis, just like cellular respiration, creates a proton concentration gradient that makes ATP, or chemical energy, as protons move through an ATP synthase. Now, when the electrons leave the chlorophyll molecules, it leaves behind a hole. This electron hole is filled in by a water molecule that is oxidized or loses electrons as it essentially splits into two hydrogen atoms, or protons, and an oxygen atom. Two oxygen atoms combine to form one molecule of oxygen gas that gets released as a waste. Of course, this is waste to the plant, but we couldn't live without it. Meanwhile, the new electrons from this split of a water molecule are next in line to be bounced up to the primary electron acceptor. The proteins that are released help create the proton gradient in the thylakoid lumen important to making ATP. When an electron from photostem 2 hits the reaction center of photostem 1, the energy captured from the pigments in this photostem are used to bounce these electrons to a higher energy state, where they then fall down to the second electron transport chain. Here, the electrons ultimately land on the molecule NADP+, which is an electron carrier similar to the electron carrier NAD+, used in cellular respiration. NADP+ becomes reduced to NADPH. These reduced electrons carriers can then continue on with these electrons to the second stage, the dark reactions, otherwise known as the Calvin cycle. This step is also sometimes referred to as the Calvin-Benson cycle, as it gets its name from the scientists who discovered it. While sunlight is used during the light reactions to produce ATP and the electron carrier NADPH, the dark reactions use these products to complete photosynthesis without the use of light energy. The light reactions produce ATP and NADPH in the thylakoids of chloroplasts. These products are released into the stroma of the chloroplast. Here the Calvin cycle can take off, using carbon dioxide from the air to create sugars. The key to creating sugars comes from carbon fixation, where inorganic carbon is fixed into organic carbon such as sugars. In the Calvin cycle, carbon dioxide is fixed into an organic molecule through the help of an enzyme called Rubisco. Here, the carbon dioxide that we exhale as a waste is used by plants performing photosynthesis. Rubisco joins 3 carbon dioxide molecules with 3 5-carbon molecules that each have 2 phosphates called RuBP. 6 3-carbon molecules are created, each with 1 phosphate. 6 ATP molecules are then used, donating another phosphate to each molecule. Next, 6 NADPH electron carriers from the light reactions carry electrons to this Calvin cycle. They are oxidized to NADP+, donating electrons to the carbon molecules, which then become reduced. This results in 6 superenergetic 3-carbon molecules called glyceraldehyde 3-phosphate, or G3P. This makes 3-carbon molecule with 1 phosphate group. One of these lucky G3P molecules gets used to create glucose or other carbon molecules as it exits the cycle, while the rest of the 5 molecules are rearranged with the aid of 3 ATP, then recreate 3 RuBP molecules that then can begin the cycle again. This is the regeneration of RuBP that allows the Calvin cycle to continue. The 3 G3P molecules that exit the cycle are the most important. 2 G3P molecules can create 1 glucose molecule. This glucose molecule is the building block of creating everything else in the plant and what fuels every other organism that eats plants, like us.